that we need to have 10 people that will say, I bought it. I'm not ashamed of it. $250 million worth of Facebook and buying $250 million worth of Apple and buying $250 million worth of
100 billion of Bitcoin as fast as you can, and you'll make $1 trillion. And
to go ahead and print $1 trillion. Come out with serious news like that because
totally. There's a couple things here that I thought were really interesting. One is you touch on career risk. You know, folks jumping in and buying Bitcoin, whether you're a fund manager or a CEO, as more and more of you like yourself and Jack legitimize the space, then it reduces that career risk for more people to get in. It's less crazy. And I think, you know, it is a little frustrating though for us mega bulls because we're both hugely bullish about Bitcoin. We've put a large portion of our net worth into it. It's hard for us to look at these other people who have, and I think you were kind of right. It's a little patronizing with Paul Tudor Jones going, oh, I'll put it in a few percent. You're like, well, do you believe in it or not? If you understood the value prop, you'd be all in.
It's an ignorant statement, Dan.
Yeah.
to say I'm a great financial investor. I'm a master of the universe. I understand macroeconomics and investment, and I'm therefore allocating 1%. It's silly. It's amusing. But on the other hand, you're going to see other people that are going to take a harder position. I think there are people that are taking a much stronger position in Bitcoin now. They're just not public about it, right? I mean, when I actually came out, when I came out and said MicroStrategy did it, well, I had to, right? It's just a requirement. We're a publicly traded company, no choice. But when I actually announced my own purchase, I didn't have to. And there are people that would say don't, right? And by the way, for 99.9% of the Bitcoiners, I would say don't. I get it. People would even post on their Twitter, why'd you do that? First rule of Bitcoin, don't tell people how much Bitcoin you have. I'm like, that's true for 50 million people, but we need 10 people. We need to have 10 people that will say, I bought it. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm going to buy more. And you can too. In fact, not only can you, you probably should. You might want to get some in case it catches on. So at the point that I do it, if Jack Dorsey does it, if Mark Zuckerberg does it, if Jeff Bezos does it, if some random billionaire playing tennis in the Hamptons does it, if a Bill Ackman does it, when a Paul Tudor Jones does it, if Paul Tudor Jones really wants to do something good for his position in Bitcoin, there could be no more accretive thing he could possibly do than to be honest and say, I bought 400 million of it and I'm going to buy more. It's like, if you're not willing to say that, you're just patronizing and insulting the rest of us, right? I mean, that's my view on that. If you're not going to say that, it's like, so I think it's going to happen, right? There is some bravery, some courage here. By the way, I own courage.com. I don't think I'm going to path it to Bitcoin, although I could. But, there's a difference between buying $250 million worth of Facebook and buying $250 million worth of Apple and buying $250 million worth of sovereign debt or gold. These things are traditional, conventional asset classes that everybody understands. If you were to stand up and say, oh, I bought $250 million worth of Facebook, that's somewhere between vain, and flashy and arrogant or whatever. But when you're birthing an asset class, when you're actually legitimizing a brand new idea that 99% of the world doesn't understand and they are either ignorant of or afraid of, at that point, it's important that people with conviction stand up and they say, nothing to be ashamed of. I did it. I'm proud I did it. I'm going to buy more. It wasn't a hedge. It's not a speculation.
What is the next big news that drops? What's the next morning we wake up with? And it's like, Tesla bought $1 billion of Bitcoin. What's the next news like that? Is it a big company? I just kind of want to know your moonshot.
I think the next news that'll drop is you'll see some big investment, like famous investment names, like big macro investors or big investors in the market, and then someone will say, yeah, we bought $1 billion worth of it, or we bought a lot of it and we're buying a lot more. I don't know which one, but look, golly, there's 10,000 big companies that could buy $1 billion of this. There's 10,000 big investors that could buy $1 billion of this. And there's 10,000 individuals floating out there that could buy $1 billion of this. And that's the universe. And right now, I announced I bought $1 billion. Elon Musk announced he bought $1 billion. You know, we've had a couple of announcements of 750 million. So you got 30,000 different players, and there's not a lot of room in this thing. So at some point, you're going to see 1, 2, 3 more of them. They're going to come out with serious news like that because it's possible and it's logical.
I think it's got to be Apple. That's what I want to happen. Is like last time we talked about the Apple buying as much as possible, becoming like the Fed of Bitcoin. I'm still like, Apple, stop building an electric car to try and compete with Tesla. Just literally buy 100 billion of Bitcoin as fast as you can, and you'll make $1 trillion in 5 years. And that'll add the $1 trillion to your market cap instead of fiddling around with competing head on with Elon Musk. Like if I actually, you know what I mean? Like, and it's almost going to be fiduciarily like irresponsible for them not to have done it when they just hold their fiat. But anyway, that's like kind of, I just keep feeling like, you know, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy once you do it. And that's why Elon said in retrospect, it was inevitable. It's like, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Bitcoin's up 30%, never going, you know, since just because of Tesla. So
it is sitting right there. Apple could raise $100 billion in debt at 1 or 2% interest. They can
to compound it 200%
money.
Yeah.
And again, the leverage comes from the cheap debt markets, the corporate debt markets, convert and secured debt market. That's the leverage. The fulcrum, the place to stand, is Bitcoin. And so we're waiting to see which company is going to be the Archimedes, and they're going to use that leverage against that fulcrum to move the world. You know, and yeah, it could be. I think the real issue right now, or at least a subtle issue, is the accounting treatment if you buy the underlying Bitcoin as an intangible asset. And I think conservative CFOs, they're kind of, it creates a little bit of pause for them to buy billions and billions of dollars of an intangible asset, because they'll have to do non-GAAP accounting on a balance sheet item and explain it to their shareholders. So if they don't do that, then they have to go and they have to buy it as a fund, and then they have to get comfortable that if they held it in a fund model that they would get GAAP accounting. And so I really think right now, working through the way they communicate it to their shareholder base and the way they account for it is what causes people to pause before they aggressively pursue this strategy.
Fascinating. And you're making me think of Zuckerberg, because he copies everything that's legit, and he copied Libra. That was a huge push. He hired David Marcus, who was the PayPal guy, who was bullish on Bitcoin. So I know Facebook is thinking about, and I think they were doing some sort of remittance payment with WhatsApp in India as well. So I feel like, to me, Facebook seems like the most to integrate into their service, even beyond buying some on their balance sheet, is like just imminent.
I didn't show up, you know, Dan, to sleep with your daughter for the night in a one-night stand. I want to marry your daughter. Like, what? You know, I kind of feel like, you know, it's like, I don't want a one-night stand. You know, I actually want someone to make a commitment to me. That's the difference here. And so we need companies to make commitments. That's why it's brave for Square to step up and do it. That's why it's brave and courageous for PayPal to do it. That's why I applaud what NYDIG did and what Stone Ridge did. And I think more people need to do it. And if I have to take a bit of flack and take a bit of heat for being public, somebody's got to do it.
Totally. And I think you framed this perfectly. The first article I ever wrote was "Hodlers are the revolutionaries." We're in a war. This war moment occurs, and you need someone courageous to stand up. You need someone who's willing to sacrifice reputation because they know what's true. They know They know what they believe in is right. And that's what we all do. Well, the hodlers, the Bitcoiners, we're part of keeping that flame alive. As your analogy used earlier, we're the keepers of the flame. And we represent something very important, because this isn't just a revolution to innovate XYZ in a technology sector. This isn't a revolution to increase our human rights on one area. Money is the most fundamental component of all human life. It is the storage of all time and energy that we spent to earn it. So this is, I think, hodlers, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what role Bitcoiners and hodlers play. But I think they're part of this revolutionary guard to keep Bitcoin alive, and they're the reason why Bitcoin is alive today.
Yeah, so my thought on this, in the world of financial assets and economics, you have a $250 trillion world, and scarcity is a rare and odd and strange idea, right? Because all assets are bleeding energy. Fiat is being printed. People are issuing more bonds. Companies are issuing more equity. People are developing more real estate. Miners are mining more gold. All of those assets are inflating. And therefore, they can't hold energy very well unless, right, say a company's got to grow its cash flows faster than the rate of monetary expansion. If they're not able to do that, then they bleed energy, and they're not a good store of value. So on one hand, you have this world which is the world of the economist, where politics and philosophy enter in, and the idea is, because I believe something, it's okay to go ahead and print $1 trillion. There's a different world, the world of engineering, which I grew up in at MIT. Okay, and it's bizarre to me. Bitcoin is unique. It's the only scarce asset. It's the only one where you can't print more of it, and that makes it utterly unique in the finance world. But it's utterly ordinary in the engineering world. There isn't any engineering system that doesn't respect the laws of thermodynamics and conservation of energy. In fact, the entire universe operates under natural law, and the first law is conservation of energy.